Hi, in this video I will show you how I built a compact double-ported subwoofer enclosure with two Bose woofer drivers.
Not long ago, one of my sons gave me two defective Bose-powered bass modules. I didn't need them, but I was interested in keeping the 5-inch woofer drivers. I was also curious about the internal structure of the vented enclosures. So I decided to dismantle them to know how they were engineered. The two enclosures were made differently. I began by cutting the box that was fully made of MDF. This model was designed with a single port and a middle chamber. Next, I dismantled the second enclosure. This one was engineered with a better design. Inside the MDF box, there was also a molded port component made of hard plastic. These are the 4 speakers I removed from the 2 subwoofers base modules. I wanted the speakers for another project, but I decided to use 2 of them to fabricate a second subwoofer enclosure for my 1993 Honda del Sol. The Bose-ported structures were interesting, but I needed a more compact solution to better fit the assembly inside the trunk of my vehicle. Later, I designed a different compact ported enclosure configuration, and I printed a full-size drawing to build it. These are the wood components I cut to build the prototype. To avoid making some assembly mistakes, I compared all the parts with the full-size drawing. Next, I cut half-moon openings to be able to fit the speaker magnets inside the boxes. In order to precisely assemble and glue the inner parts, it was important to properly tape them side by side. I did the same with the second set of parts. I checked them, and the final shape was fine. Then I applied the wood glue in the V-grooves of the first pre-assemblies. I didn't use any nail during this procedure, so I had to keep the assemblies well folded until the glue was dried. 3 hours later, the first glued parts were ready. Then I removed the tapes. These are outer panels and some inner corners. Again, I used wood glue to assemble the other parts together. To precisely position all the parts together, I made some templates, like this one. I used them to drill tiny holes in order to use finishing nails on the front and the back panels. Again, I checked the positioning of the parts. Using the tracing on some panels and the guide holes helped me to assemble the inner and the outer panels without problem. Later, when the glue was dried, I assembled and fastened other panels. Since the speaker openings had to be aligned with the half-moon openings, I double-checked the positions before cutting them. As you can see, the half-moon openings were made to insert the speaker magnets. The speaker connectors were installed between the 2 boxes to group the wires in the small area. To avoid making noise inside the enclosure with the wires, I covered them with foam tape. It was also important to insert and glue the polyfill before closing the boxes. Since the positions of nails and screws were visible on the panels, it was quite simple to secure all the parts on the back panel. The external surfaces of the enclosure were difficult to cover with the charcoal carpet, but eventually I completed the work. These are 2 pieces of wood I added to the enclosure to secure the amplifier between the 2 boxes. Before installing the new subwoofer box assembly, I removed the molded carpets from the sides of the trunk. Therefore, I was able to film the metal structure. Since I had access to the small grills, I removed both of them because they were not really required. The cavities behind the side openings are part of the flow-through ventilation system. so the sound waves can use the space to travel from the trunk to the cabin grills located behind the seats. Then I refitted the molded carpets. The amplifier was not positioned the same way it was before. For that reason, I had to extend the power cables to fit the new installation. At that moment, the back panel was only held by the lower supports, so I added the upper brackets to secure the assembly. After, I connected the wires and I secured some cables. Then I refitted the roof holder and the struts. This is the final routing that was done to better secure the wires and the connectors. These are some basic measurements of the subwoofer box assembly.
Finally, I was satisfied with the result. The second prototype provided a better sound balance between the driver's side and the passenger side.